I knew you, I loved you.
We're going to jump right back in to the principle and foundation. And again, I am relying on the fact that every one of us who's participating today has had an experience of the exercises. So what I'd like you to do is kind of pull into your backdrop, your experience of walking through those exercises and what exactly the lasting effects of that have been for you. Because it's impossible to extract the exercises from our personal reality. I mean, it's antithetical to the exercises. The exercises are always about our own personal context and our own personal relationship with God and how that can be universalized out for the benefit of all those with whom we are companions. So, given that, I'm going to share with you Dave Fleming's interpretation of the principle and foundation. You know, I started off preparing for this and I thought, let's just use the master himself. We'll go with Ignatius. And then I changed my mind. So I want to use Dave Fleming's because I just like the way, for our purposes this morning, it brings us immediately not just into the start of the exercises, but almost into relationship with our own experiences in a very mindful way. Instead of reading it academically, I want you to read it personally. And I'm not, obviously, we can't share a whole lot in this format, but I'd like you to use this as a reflective experience, okay? The goal of our life is to live with God forever. God, who loves us, gave us life. Our own response of love allows God's life to flow into us without limit. All the things in this world are gifts from God, presented to us so that we can know God more easily and make a return of love more readily. As a result, we appreciate and use all these gifts of God insofar as they help us develop as loving persons. But if any of these gifts becomes the center of our lives, they displace God and so hinder our growth toward our goal. In everyday life, then, we must hold ourselves in balance before all of these created gifts, insofar as we have a choice and are not bound by some obligation. We should not fix our desires on health or sickness, wealth or poverty, success or failure, a long life or short one. For everything has the potential of calling forth in us a deeper response to our life in God. Our only desire and our one choice should be this: I want and I choose what better leads to God's deepening life in me. In terms of reflecting on our own experience, this can never get stale because life continues to present us with new experiences and new circumstances and new contexts for which this is fresh over and over and over again. So the question is, when you think about the gifts that have been entrusted to you by God, whether they're natural gifts or whether they're talents that you have honed, or whether they're things that you have really, really worked hard at trying to nurture in yourself. The question becomes, is there something that you lack that you really try to not lack? Because the principle and foundation is going to ask us to wrestle with certain questions. And those questions are in the undercurrent of the principle and foundation. But the wrestling match is what the principle and foundation calls us to. So the wrestling match of jealousy. You know, are there certain gifts that you wish you had? Because if we can't be content with the gifts we have, jealousy, we're always going to be looking at the other person and wishing I had what they have. Where are the places where you wrestle with pride? Pride that, yeah, I worked hard for this. I can do this, and I'm gonna make sure everybody knows how hard I worked. The principle and foundation is going to call us back to that and say, what happens if that particular gift or capability or opportunity is removed from you? Can you let it go? How do we accept the things that we wish were different? When, you watch the news and you see these people out in the West who have lost everything to the fires. The principle and foundation is built, is made, is relevant in those kinds of moments when we've lost everything. And Ignatius is going to say, can I hold my everything and my nothing equally? When everything is taken away from me, the principle and foundation is going to say, God is not. But how can I hold what I have in order to allow it to be taken? These are tough questions. So whether that's about material things or whether it's about success and failure, can I welcome both equally when they come? Can I welcome both riches and poverty when they come? Can I welcome both health and illness when it comes? Can I accept both life and death when they present themselves? The principle and foundation asks that we have the potential to call forth the deepest response of our existence into those experiences. It reminds us of who we are, where we've come from, and what we have to rely on. So I know there was a point in time when I was in charge of the novices in our community. And so with religious life, when you're a novice, you spend all your time thinking about and learning about what it means to live a life in the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. When we would talk about the vow of poverty, one of the ways I liked to describe this is rooted in the principle and foundation. It's that concept of being open-handed. And when I'm open-handed, I don't know what posture you like to pray in, but oftentimes I pray with my hands open like this. And when I think about it in terms of a prayer for openness to what God will give, that's a beautiful feeling to me. That's a sense of freedom. That's a sense of hope. That's a sense of openness. This posture, when I'm waiting for what God would provide, has positive overtones and undertones for me. But I want you to think about this for a second. When God has provided something and I'm standing or sitting there in my prayer posture in gratitude for what God has given me, whether that's health, whether that's opportunity, whether that's giftedness, whether that's joy, whatever that might be, when I have that in my hands and I've received something wonderful from God, poverty and the principle and foundation basically says, I hold that with open hands. I don't hold on to it. I hold it with open hands so that if it's taken, I'm in the same posture I was before. That openness and receptivity is just as important to be able to hand over as it is to be able to receive. So we ask God to give us what God will give us. And if it's wonderful, hopeful, positive things, that is, as Ignatius would call it, that fills me with consolation. But when those are removed, or when God provides things that are difficult or painful or ridden with doubts, can I receive those with just as much openness and hope and gratitude? Now, I will be honest with you. if I were to ask myself, if I were you and I heard myself ask that question just now, I would say, can I receive those things with equal gratitude and hope and all those positive feelings? My answer, no. No, I can't. Those are really hard things. Those are really, really hard things. What the principles and foundation tells us is that, yes, those are really hard things. And we are asked to continue to nurture. Ignatius's brilliance here is that we might not ever be able to reach the point where we say, oh, thank you, God, for this painful reality, or thank you for, this thing that's so hard for me. But can I hold it with open hands and say, I don't know yet what you're going to do with this. I don't know how it will serve to bring me closer to you, but I trust and I believe that it can and it will. So in my mind, this is how Ignatius and the first part of the exercises prepares us for what this great adventure into the heart of God is going to present to us. The 4 weeks of the exercises lead us basically through a very intense look at what it means to be human, what it means to be who we are, and what it means to be who we are in the life of God. And that is both a beautiful journey and a difficult journey and a purifying journey. So being rooted in this principle beginning, the foundation, there's a reason it's called the foundation, is because this mindset, heart set, soul set will be for us the touchstone for everything that we will experience moving through the exercises. So in the principle and foundation, the grace we are seeking is spiritual freedom. It's that sense of indifference, holy indifference. And I don't know about you, but every time I read about it or pray about it or think about it, it's new for me because there's always something that I'm not indifferent about. Always. Okay. So some questions for us to consider, or some distinctions. If the goal is to live with God forever, how do I allow that to happen? Not just in heaven, not just in eternity, but in the here and now. How do I live with God in the here and now? And if the recognition that is present in this principle and foundation is that all is gift, how can I ask that all things lead me closer to God? What does that prayer become for my actual life circumstances today? What are the things that I need God's help with to be able to get me closer to God? How can I be less attached to particular outcomes, to particular circumstances, to particular decisions? How can I pray to be less attached to the specific things that I desire, even if those desires are good? The principle and foundation also helps us realize that all things, everything in our experience and everything in the experience of the entirety of human history is contingent, that we are all connected. We are all connected and in harmony with one another. Let's go back here for a second. So when we are talking about principle and foundation, we received all as gift. And we try to recognize that indifference and holding things open-handedly, health and sickness, success and failure, appreciation or lack of appreciation. Okay, we can identify and name our deepest desires. And how is God using those desires to deepen God's own life within us? One of the tools we're given to do this is the practice of the Examen, which is a beautiful, beautiful daily practice to be in tune with the things that God does in our lives, the gifts he presents, the opportunities, the experiences, the people. And then a deep identification with who I am in God's eyes. how incredibly loved I am, how incredibly cared for I am, how incredibly purposeful my existence is in the here and now. You know, what is the experience and the relationship of myself with God in the here and now? What is God's life in me? Where is it leading me? What is it asking of me? How is it requiring my response? So all of this as principle and foundation is a setup for the experience of the rest of the exercises. You know, it's putting us in a disposition. It's giving us a touchstone to return to over and over and over again as we walk through these experiences of the exercises. This is the experience of the life of God within us. And the question of, okay, God, I don't know what you're asking of me. I don't know how this is working to the benefit of myself or anyone else. But I do know that you are God and that you know. And so I give you my trust. I give you my openness. I give you myself to use as it can be used. Open up that space in me and help me to respond in ways that are faithful, in ways that are generous, in ways that are trusting. And I guess I propose both for you and for myself, maybe today to return to this prayer and just open ourselves up to what is the Spirit doing through this experience today for us now as you continue to move into your own experience in the Magis program.
You are a gift. You are loved. You are mine because you are a gift. You are a gift.